If you're seeing this message in this light on your GM vehicle, stick around, I'm going to help you out. Alright, today we're going to be replacing a wheel hub bearing assembly on a 2011 Chevy Equinox. Now on this vehicle, it is the root cause of the StabiliTrak and ABS issue that we're seeing. But I should mention that GM has a service bulletin out on this issue, and you may be able to resolve your issue without spending any money. So I'm going to link to that service bulletin down in the description section, alright? Before we get started, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who takes the time to hit that subscribe button. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button yourself so you can receive notifications of future videos, alright? Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, when the ABS light came on and the traction control message came up, the first thing I did was scan the vehicle with this Autel MaxiLink ML629, which has ABS scanning functionality. And you can see here that the right wheel speed sensor circuit signal is erratic, right there on the bottom, okay? So a tool like this can save you a significant amount of time just trying to determine which wheel speed sensor is problematic, okay? Alright, you can see I have the vehicle up off the ground, supported by a jack and a jack stand. The first thing we need to do is remove this axle nut, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this punch and I'm going to wedge it in between the rotors so it's going to rest against this caliper as we begin to wind that off, okay? You can use a screwdriver or something also. I do want to mention that the axle nut is 35 millimeters, so you're going to need a large socket to do that. And I'm going to link to the tools and the parts down below, but I can tell you that buying these in a kit with several different sizes is a lot cheaper than buying them individually, alright? So 35 millimeters on that. Next thing we need to do is remove this brake caliper, and we've got a couple of 18 millimeter bolts right there and one down below. Let me set the camera down, we'll bust that loose. Alright, I just did a front brake job on this not too long ago, but just to point out, we're talking about these bolts, not these caliper pin bolts, alright? 18 millimeters on this one. Alright, at this point you should be able to break your caliper loose. And obviously if you need front brake pads and rotors, now would be a good time to do that. I just put these on there. And I'm just going to use one of these caliper hangers. You can use a piece of wire or something just to hang it up off the spring here. Just get it out of the way so it's not hanging on the brake hose. Okay, that's the important part. Alright, next I'm going to remove this, this Torx bolt here that's holding the rotor to the bearing assembly. Alright, and hopefully this will come out. It just had it out about a month ago, so T30 Torx on this one. Just using a bit socket here. Okay, if you're going to reuse your rotors and they're stuck to the hub, you can take a piece of wood and a hammer and gently give them a couple of love taps on the back here. Alright. Alright, you can see we have the caliper hanging up out of the way. We've got the rotor off. At this point, the manual actually says we need to remove the wheel speed sensor and disconnect the entire harness. I believe those instructions are for a different vehicle because this wheel speed sensor goes into the steering knuckle. I will pull it out of there just to get it out of the way, but I'm not going to go through the process of removing the entire cable and harness and everything because it's not necessary. On many vehicles, that wheel speed sensor is going to be included with the hub assembly, but not with this Equinox, okay? Let's go ahead and pop that out. I think it's a 10 millimeter. But that's essentially it, and there are no gears on this bearing assembly. It works differently. It works off the polarity of a magnet backplate, okay? Alright, I'm just going to take a punch and make sure that our axle is free from the bearing because we don't want to be pulling our axle out with the bearing, okay? Alright, this next step is going to be difficult to film from the backside, but you can see that I sprayed the bolt ends down with PB Blaster, okay? And on the backside, you've got bolt heads that obviously correspond to those locations. And they are 13 millimeter right there. One on the other side, one on the top, okay? I probably won't film much of this. And the other thing that I do occasionally is I only back the bolts out a little ways and then I hit them with an air hammer because these can be a pain to get out, but I might be able to hit this with the air hammer. So, okay, I just want to show that on this top one I'm using a 3/8 inch ratchet and a long extension just to shoot by this aftermarket strut here. I don't know if you'd have the same problem on an OEM strut, okay? Alright, let's get the hub out. Alright, so as I mentioned before, the other thing I've done on wheel bearings is I'll back the bolts out just a little bit, and then I use the air hammer squarely on the bolt heads, because that way you have 3 points to hit it on. But we're going to try this first here, see what happens. Alright, I've got to say that bearing is on there. I nailed it with the air hammer, I nailed it with that hammer, and it's not budging. So here's what I've got. I've got a grade 8 bolt going through that hole, a couple of washers, a nut, and I've got it resting against a piece of steel so that the bolt doesn't dig into the steering knuckle. Okay, so we're going to hit that with the battery impact first. Well, it looks like we could use a new backing plate, so you might want to be prepared with that, but I think we got it. Alright, let's go take a look at how I rigged this up in case you run into the same problem. Alright, that was fun. Let's take a quick look. You can see on this new hub here, it's got a full ring around the back. And this one was obviously losing pieces upon the removal process. But when I was trying to perform the procedure outlined by the service bulletin, I found that a piece was already missing. And that was what was causing the wheel speed sensor to throw an error, which was causing the StabiliTrak error. Okay, so here's what we did. Basically, I took a bolt, went through the hub, put a nut on the back with a couple of heavy-duty washers, and I did have to flatten the washers off to make them sit in there. Okay, and then I took a piece of flat steel, actually a couple of pieces of flat steel, and I went against the steering knuckle like this, and you can see where the bolt was digging in to the steel. We do have a little bit of damage there, not really damage. That's where I hit it with the chisel, so I'm going to have to grind that down real quick. But the biggest impact was on the dust shield here. It chewed that up a little bit. But overall, not bad. I would say it took about an hour to remove that wheel hub. So probably the worst one I've had. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a wire brush and clean this all up. I'm going to put a layer of grease around the inside of that, and we'll get the new one installed. Alright, so I took a wire brush and hit the inside of this with some penetrating fluid and wire brushed it. I took a flat file and took care of that little chisel spot there. So now we need to get our backing plate on and install the new bearing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to push this on just far enough to get the bolt started, because I don't really want to get it on there without making sure that we have the bolt holes lined up. We don't want to fight with this again. And I think I got it. Alright, that one's threaded. Let me check the other side here. Alright, so all the bolts are in, and it pulled the bearing in nicely here. So these all get torqued down to 52 foot-pounds, okay? So let me get that done real quick. And that again was a 10 millimeter. And I don't have a torque spec for that, just tighten it down so that it doesn't fall out, but you don't want to break anything. That's the torque spec. Alright, we'll throw the rotor back on. Make sure you line your hole up here for the Torx screw, which on this hub here, it's down here. Okay. Just like that. Alright, let's get our caliper back on here. Okay. Just wiggle it on. We're going to take one of our 18 millimeter bolts here, get that started. All right, those caliper mounting bolts get torqued down to 140 foot-pounds, all right? All right, the last thing we need to do is replace our axle nut. Now, anytime you remove one, they recommend putting a new one back on there, okay? All right, this hub nut gets torqued down to 151 foot-pounds. All right, and I've got the punch in there against the caliper again. All right, there we go. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Give me that thumbs up if you did find it helpful. And if you're not a subscriber and you want to see more of this type of stuff, hit that subscribe button, all right? Leave questions and comments below. If you get stuck pulling this hub off, leave it down below and I might be able to walk you through how I use that bolt and nut combination to get this thing off, all right? Good luck, have fun, be safe, and thanks for watching.